Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 21st and tonight's movie is The Endless. This is a 2017 science fiction horror movie directed and starring the pair of Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. This movie heavily features two things that horror movie makers love: cults and cosmic horror scientific multiverse mumbo jumbo. Apparently, these brothers had escaped a cult a while ago and they got a video cassette from the cult and they end up going back. I'm pretty sure I found this movie when I saw one of those YouTube videos about, I think it was like most cruel and unusual fates in a horror movie. And this one was on that video, and the fate described was indeed cruel and unusual, and it made me interested in this film. This is apparently sort of in a trilogy of movies. They're like kind of just exist in the same universe. I don't know. I feel like you need a lot more than just some Easter eggs to consider movies to be part of the same series, but whatever. Apparently, I don't need to see either of the other two movies in this series to understand this one. I can't really think of anything else to say. I'm just going to watch the movie now. The way this movie was executed was pretty interesting. It was definitely one of those more cerebral movies, but the execution was a little confusing at times, and throughout the movie I grew to legitimately hate one of the main characters. So, I think I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. The idea of this movie from a horror standpoint is really good. This is like Lovecraftian, like cosmic horror. But that horror also has to be delivered with the two leads, Aaron and Justin. I really don't get why the main characters are the same names as the directors in real life. I don't really understand what the point of that was. You know, it would be cool if they actually did have the same names, but it was the other one. Like Aaron was playing a character named Justin, and Justin was playing a character named Aaron. That would make things so needlessly confusing for no reason. That sounds funny. Anyway, Justin plays the role of the overprotective older brother, and Aaron is a stupid brat. In the past, I've talked about like the idea of the problem character, the one that only seems to exist to make the story keep going and make the lives of everyone around them worse. That is Aaron in this movie. And it's not even like he has a character arc and turns things around by the end of the film. He actually keeps getting worse. This may have just been a side effect of this movie having a very small budget. But this is one of those horror movies where it's all about the things that you don't see. Like some of the really graphic, really terrible stuff is not shown. And that also contributes to like the Lovecraftian nature of this film. The film looks good for the most part. The effects were decent. There's just one thing that was very confusing. There were a lot of these wide pan shots in this movie, and there was that weird, like, cylindrical look to it, like in the Five Nights at Freddy's games. But other than that, the cinematography and special effects were pretty good. I feel like this movie mostly just rides on having a really, really good concept. It's very interesting. There's a lot you could do with it. The execution I found wanting in a few places, and I really think that they should have brought Aaron's character back to the drawing board and like give it a few tweaks because I actually hated this man by the end of the movie. And because of the way this movie is paced, like almost nothing happens for like the entire first half. There isn't really much I even want to talk about that doesn't go into spoilers. So I'm just going to start talking spoilers now. The cults camp in this movie, and they even like try to say, we're not a cult. What about this cult? Like, it's this compound in the middle of the wilderness with a bunch of people living there, and you have to move there, and you're not given contact with the outside world, and nobody ever wants to leave. Like, if that's not a cult, that's close enough. But anyway, this cult is all revolving around this mysterious cosmic force. We're given very vague descriptions. Basically, we only ever see like totems or representations of it. But this is some like alien or demon whose most dangerous power is the ability to manipulate space and time. One thing that they establish in this movie is that they were gone from the cult for 10 years. I don't know how long they were with them before that. Considering events that happened later on in this movie, it probably wasn't that long. But even just despite that, the way they were talking about how they were just kids when they were in the cult and how old they look by the time the movie happens, it feels like there would need to be a gap much longer than 10 years. But anyway, one thing they pick up is that everybody at the camp looks exactly like they did 10 years prior. And the thing that I knew about this movie going into it from that video it appeared in that I saw is the main weapon of this entity is the use of time loops. The entity seems to have like control of these little pockets in this area. They're like big invisible domes and they're marked on the outside with these weird like stakes driven into the ground that have these bizarre volcanic form looking rocks. And the time loops seem to be different for each one of those little bubbles. And I don't exactly know the time range. They say that some loops are a lot longer than others. One character has a loop that's only a few hours, and that thing I mentioned at the very beginning, that cruel and unusual fate. And when you think about it, this might actually be the worst fate I've ever heard in anything. Like, it might even usurp Old Porky in the absolute safety castle from Mother 3 for past the heat death of the universe. One of the loops with one of the characters, we don't even get this character's name. We don't have time to get this character's name. His time loop lasts roughly 4.5 seconds. And the way that the loop is reset, either you kill yourself or the entity kills you. And a lot of characters say that it's better off if you just kill yourself because you don't want what the entity has in store for you. This guy is cursed to just get up out of a chair and die over and over, like every 4.5 seconds, for the rest of time. And Aaron sees this himself. He sees the actual worst case scenario, the fate worse than death that can be brought upon him if he stays in this cult. And keep that in mind for later. There is this ritual that happens. There's like a moon, and then there's another moon that shows up. And when the third moon shows up and becomes full, this big ascension happens, is what the cult members call it. And I'm pretty sure that this ascension is this entity coming to end the main loop that is contained within the campgrounds. And by the way, the reason why Aaron and Justin are even there in the first place is that Aaron is nostalgic about his days in this doomsday cult. Well, it's not really a doomsday cult, it's ongoing nightmare cult, but they don't know that yet. And he's saying it's like we had like real food. We didn't have to eat ramen because they're like living paycheck to paycheck. And again, he sees the fate of this one poor soul who is locked in a 4.5 second death loop forever. And he says that he wants to stay because a loop of life where you get killed by this abominable entity is better than the life he had on the outside. Excuse me? How delusional slash stupid are you? This main character that we're, I think, supposed to like actually said it is better to live an endless loop, dying an infinite number of times and never being able to escape your suffering. That is preferable than being poor and not being able to get a date. And you know what Justin finally says to convince Aaron to leave? It's not even that. He says, okay, I respect your decision, but I will feel guilty the rest of my life if I leave you here, so I'm staying with you. And then Aaron says, okay, then we'll go. I guess he was like testing him because he thought that Justin was like over controlling and wouldn't let him make his own mistakes or whatever. And it doesn't even stop there. While they're pushing the car, and by the way, they have to push the car away because from the very beginning, Aaron doesn't want to get a new car battery, even though he keeps wearing out the one that they have because he keeps turning on the light in the car and just leaving it like that. So when they actually do get to the compound and Justin does try to leave on his own, the car won't start because the battery was drained. And while they are pushing the car, and the camp is getting absolutely eviscerated by the entity behind them while this is happening, trying to push it so that it gets enough speed for them to be able to start the car without the battery, he starts saying, all you've done is ruin my life, but you're my brother, so I have to love you anyway. It's like, screw you, dude. I'm pretty sure the only reason why Justin didn't just leave him there to his horrible fate is the fact that he needed another person to help start the car and escape himself. And the last part of this movie is Aaron is the one driving, and they do escape, and they're in the middle of the desert. And Justin says, "We need to get gas." And then Aaron says, "Like, no, no, don't worry. It's like just because the gas light's on and it's on E, that doesn't mean anything." And Justin is like, "Fine," and then like goes to sleep. So For all we know, they just break down and die of heat exhaustion in the middle of the desert right after this movie ends. Aaron has to be one of the dumbest characters I've ever seen in a movie. Like, I was ready to just throw him out when he legitimately tried to make the argument that a woman cannot be a pedophile. I am not joking. So yeah, Aaron's character was a problem for me with this movie, but it does still have a really good like idea, and it's that idea is executed well. I just have issues with Aaron as a character and the movie's pacing. I thought it was kind of slow, but overall, this movie was very interesting. Maybe I'll check out the other movies in this quasi trilogy in later Horror Nights, but I don't know. I'll see you guys tomorrow.